Welcome to Hip to the Scene. Talking music, videos, and everything in between.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Hip to the Scene, where every single episode we bring in an expert, someone who is truly 100% hip to the scene, to answer a question that we know talented creatives all over the world are looking to have answered. You know, when you're entering the music industry, there are a couple of names you should instantly be familiar with. One of those names is our guest today, Matt Pinfield. Matt is a New Jersey musical kindred spirit, and we're thrilled to have him as a guest. Now, his first taste in the limelight happened in the early 80s. He was a DJ and music director at WRSU-FM in New Brunswick, Rutgers Radio. He then began a long tenure as the beloved DJ at the Melody Bar in New Brunswick. From there, he went on to be the voice everybody listened to on WHTG-FM, Modern Rock at the Jersey Shore. And as his star continued to shine even brighter, he began a long and successful career at MTV as the host of 120 Minutes. Matt has interviewed the biggest stars in rock and roll, and over all the time, whether he was an A&R guy at Columbia Records or he worked at WRXP in New York or KFOG in San Francisco, Sirius XM, Matt has always been the most trusted opinion in rock music. And that's not just me saying that. That's Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins. Matt and I have been friends for many decades, and I'm thrilled to have him as a guest on Hip to the Scene to share his vast knowledge and to answer the question, what does the future of rock and roll look like in 2021? Matt, welcome to Hip to the Scene.
It's great to see you, Andy. How you doing, man? It's really great to catch up with you again. You were, you asked that question, and there's so many different things I could say about it. Rock and roll is really alive and well, and what's happening is, it's of course fragmented over the years, and even though it may not be in the real forefront of the mainstream, there are so many great new young bands coming out, and it's interesting because radio has changed so much, Andy. Alternative radio has shied away from the use of guitars, which I think is a mistake, and it shows in their ratings because their ratings are in the toilet, or they're very low. That's a kinder way of putting it. And rock stations around the country still have really high ratings pretty much everywhere, including here in Los Angeles, where I do a show called New and Approved on KLOS, which is New Music, New Rock Countdown, that I do every Sunday night. It has an incredible rating share, 14 share, which is, as you know, most shows, if they have a 4 or 5, they're slaying it. And so this show which is the show that focuses on a countdown of new rock tracks every single week, plus interviews and songs to watch. I mean, it shows how hungry people are, not only in Los Angeles where I'm doing this show, but all over the country. I got to say, where rock is right now is, I think it's really hungry to get into the live venue again. I think that people are absolutely ready to get out and tour. It's been a tough time for the touring and live music industry, keeping venues open, putting food on the table for, all the different people that work there, whether it be bartenders, whether it's, people that work in the ticket booths, roadies, techs, everybody, that work, it's been a pretty crazy time. So A lot of venues have closed permanently. Some of them are, hanging on by a thread. A lot of things are starting to open up again slowly at smaller capacities. But I know that most of the bands that I speak to are really hungry to get out and tour again. So,
Well, I will tell you, Matt, New and Improved is an international phenomenon. When I go and watch you talk to one of my heroes, Alice, that was an incredible interview, sir.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, Andy. It was cool because I was working on a TV show with Alice that is being edited right now, but there's a show called No Cover where I do interviews with all the contestants. So I'm one of the 3 hosts. There's 2 hosts that do stage stuff, and then I am the guy who talks to all the contestants. But the judges are Alice Cooper, Gavin Rossdale from Bush, Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm, and Bishop Briggs, and these. It's a show. It's called No Cover because the artists are not allowed to do covers. It's basically the opposite idea of what American Idol and The Voice are, and it's in the rock genre. And it's rock and alternative, and even things that are a little folky, to be honest with you, some folk music. So it's and some electronic stuff. So that show is being edited right now, and Alice and I are working on the same set there for 2 weeks, shooting this show. And we met in the '90s. Somebody introduced me to him backstage at a concert. I was doing a job for MTV in Phoenix, Arizona, and Mark McGrath, from Sugar Ray and from his TV stuff. Was surprising me. He happened to be there. He was playing that night. He goes, "Hey, Matt, there's somebody around the corner I want you to meet." And when I saw it was Alice, I was so excited because, like so many kids in America, I grew up listening to Alice Cooper among so many other things, and I loved his music. And he was such a gentleman. He's an incredible guy. He's been sober almost 40 years, and, he's just, he's still killing it. And he just made a new record, and it sounds incredible, called Detroit Stories. So yeah, it's been fun. I love doing that show. I've been doing another show, Andy, for 10 years for Westwood One, which is a syndication company here in America. It's been syndicating radio shows for decades. And that show is called Flashback with Matt Pinfield, and it's on in New Jersey, believe it or not, on the Hawk, which is down in Monmouth and Ocean counties on Saturday mornings from 6 to 10. So it's on in my state. It's also on in Atlantic City. So it's on all over the country. There's about 100 FM stations that carry the show. And I've been doing that as a weekend show, which is a classic rock history show for, a good 10 years, which is, I'm excited that is, one of those main things it's I've been doing for a very long time. But, I'm really excited about it, Andy. I think, there's a lot of new young bands out there and people that are discovering rock and roll and guitars. And, one of my favorite bands is a band called Royal Blood, who have been around for about 6 years from the UK. They're from Brighton, which is the town where most people would know that from the movie Quadrophenia, the Who movie. It's where the actual mods and the rockers went to battle fighting on the beach, these people, but years ago. And so I love Royal Blood. They're a 2-piece band. It's a bass player and a drummer. The bass player has an incredible voice. The drummer's a monster. A bass player plays through a bunch of pedals, but he has this incredible groove. I mean, you can hook up all the pedals in the world you want, but like he even said himself, he thinks it's really about the chemistry between the 2 members of the band. And they have some serious swagger. So those guys are a great rock and roll band. But there are new bands popping up everywhere, in rock. There's a band from here in Los Angeles called Dirty Honey, and they're definitely inspired by, music of the past, like Stones, Faces, Zeppelin. But, there are a lot of bands that are young people that are out there that are going back and listening to some of the classics. And then there are a lot of indie bands, too, with guitars. So I truly believe that, rock is still alive and well, even if it's not in the mainstream, meaning, it's not on top 40 radio. But I think the formats in radio in general have just painted themselves all into one corner. And I don't think people listen to music, not a lot of people just like that. I think, and it's proven by the way people stream on Spotify, Amazon Music, or Apple, that people like music from many different genres. It's really all about the artist whether they invest emotionally in an artist or about how great a song is. Some people have preferences and there's genres they don't relate to at all, but I think that, rock gets sold short. I think Gene Simmons is absolutely wrong. I agree with Alice Cooper, what he said on my show. He goes, Gene Simmons is wrong. Rock is not dead. And it certainly, is not. And, there's a new movie that came out called Long Live Rock, which is about these festivals, rock festivals. And these people, plan their literally years around these shows. And these are the bands that are kind of in the hard rock and active rock format of music. But it's alive and well. And, even though maybe in the major cities on each coast, meaning LA and New York, it's not represented as much as it should be. It is here. I mean, with KLOS, it plays rock, new rock and classic rock. And, New York City only really has Q1043. And then Jersey, of course, has the Rat, which is at DHA. So there's good stations on both coasts. But the rest of the country, rock is still really important to so many people. So, and when records come out, you take the Pretty Reckless as a band, that just had a #1 rock album in 10 countries, including the U.S. So, and Alice Cooper had his first #1 album in 48 years. Of course, he was saying it wasn't like when it sold records back in 1973 when his last one, Billion Dollar Babies, came out with No More Mr. Nice Guy. Yeah, it's a different world now because of streaming. But again, if you look at the numbers on some of the rock records that are just these classic songs, the amount of streams are really staggering. And there's a lot of stuff. So anyway, I've been talking pretty much straight through, Andy. I'm going to let you get some questions in.
No, the big question is, since we've had very similar life journeys, I remember back to February 9th, 1964, my older sister, same age as Colleen, comes running into my room Sunday night. She's spinning around like a whirling dervish. She's saying, come on, come on, come on. We're going to go watch Beatles on TV. And I figured it would be some kind of insect show. But no, it wasn't. It were these people playing instruments that I'd never really seen before. And this guy singing All My Loving. And I looked at my sister on one side and she was screaming and spinning around. And my brother on my other side, maybe a little younger than Glenn, his jaw would hit the floor. And then I remember looking around and looking at my parents. They were aghast. Now, of course, Big Bill Gessner, I don't know if you know this, Matt, he was not very supportive of my creative pursuits. What about George? Did he ever say, hey, what's up with all this rock and roll that you're enthralled with?
No, my dad was so supportive. He was, it's interesting. My first memories of listening to music were, my dad was a school teacher, right? He had a family. He was very bright. He taught physics. He was, at University of Georgia, they wanted him to go on and work and literally get into major science because of his brilliance. But he had adopted my brother, who was, from my mom's first marriage, my brother Glenn, and then he had Colleen, and then I was born, so he had 3 children. So he decided he wanted to teach, and so we lived first in a town called Dunellen, New Jersey, when we moved back from Athens, Georgia, and my earliest memories is sitting in front of a record player there and listening to records by the Beatles. I know. I might have been asleep when I was so young. I think I was 3. I might have been asleep when the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan. But my earliest memories are those records, and seeing that Capitol label right on those records. That really, the yellow and orange, beautiful, bright label. And it's funny because now I live 2 blocks from the Capitol Records building, the Capitol round building. It looks like a disc all the way around, where Sinatra and the Beach Boys and everybody is recorded. So, no, my dad was absolutely supportive. He was a really incredible guy. They could see my love for music at a very young age. I fell in love with the radio, and just because I wanted to hear songs, music was so evident to them early on that I was just enamored by music. So I remember, when I was young, they'd buy me some records, but I, really depended on the radio and my older brothers and sisters' records. And, every holiday that's what I wanted. I wanted records. I mean, from the time I was a kid, and then when I got older, when I could be, like 9 or 10, 11, I could deliver papers and mow lawns. That's how I paid for my records. Completely supportive. Excuse me. But my dad, of course, they didn't just hand me everything because we didn't have the money, So I really learned the value of working and earning a dollar, and what I spent it on for years was music. There's no question about it. So I was really grateful for my father that he did things like, we didn't have a lot of money, but like I said, he was incredibly smart man, and he built my first stereo that I had by hand. And what he did is, because he also ran the audiovisual department in East Brunswick High School in New Jersey, he had these catalogs so he could order the parts and just pay for them himself. And so he literally cut the wood himself, shellacked it, and put the wood finish over it, put all the dials, the components, built the speakers by hand, everything. I gave that stereo away years ago because somebody in a relative or somebody needed one. But man, what I would give to have that stereo now, just because my dad's no longer with us. He died in 2008. And, I miss him very much and I love the man. That is something that I wish I had held on to, because, when you're young, you don't know. You're like, oh, whatever. Now I'm going to buy this Pioneer or Technique stereo. That was really what it came down to as you got a little bit older. But I mean, I thought about what that meant, the love and support that went into doing that. Even though he didn't quite, always understand it, but he supported it, you know what I mean? I think that was the same thing, my parents, and I think there were times when my mother wondered what I was doing. She's unbelievable now. She's totally supportive, and, she's going to be 89. We're very close. My mom, I talk to her every day because I promised my dad the day he died that I would be around for my mom. And my sister lives by her. They're in Florida. So, she has my sister nearby. My brother's not that far away from them. But I call my mother every day. And I got to say, that I'm grateful that he did support that as well, because, we also built this another thing that came from one of those kits. It was called the Science Fair book. And it was Science Fair was the name of a company that actually I remember seeing this book, and it had all these electronic things in it I didn't understand. If I looked at it, I'm like, what is? So my dad bought this small AM transmitter that did, and what he did was we used beat up turntables, bought a cheap Radio Shack mixer, microphones that were like barely broken and they were thrown out from the high school. And we did radio shows from my basement when we were kids at like 9 years old. And me and the neighborhood kids would do radio shows. And it was funny because you would run a wire. He would wire it up to the antenna on the roof. Of course, these were pre-cable days. It's I'm guessing 1970, 71, maybe. And he, literally, we would broadcast a block. This thing was an AM transmitter. And, it worked on the very end of the dial, kind of, how things do now, like when you do have to put a component that you broadcast through your actual radio, it's usually at the end where it's not going to interfere with any of the other station signals that would overpower it. And we thought we were the coolest because somebody could run down the street with a transistor radio or portable radio and go, listen on the corner, I had to start somewhere. And, that's what we would do. But, I think it's really interesting. Because I look at that as support from my father that nurtured in its own way, even though I didn't understand it really at the time as a child, my love for what I was going to end up doing for the rest of my life. And, I've been in radio now for 37 years professionally, not counting RSU. Now, of course, HCG might have been a small station, but it was a great station. It was a mom and pop. It was very influential. My days at HCG is really where it made the jump for me to become known in the industry by being a music director at that commercial radio station, and that was my in to get to know people that actually work directly at record companies and other radio stations. So that I love that station, HCG, so much, and my experiences are, and I loved RSU, the Rutgers station too. I've just have incredible memories of doing radio in college. And one of the things that was really interesting, because through your band, through Spiral Jetty, when I got to RSU to Rutgers, there was no support of local music at all. I mean, that was something that was a vision of mine that I manifested. There was no local music show. There was a show called Now Wave that played imports. A couple of friends did that were on the station, and I would play them on my show anyway because it was the same thing, kind of thing. But one of the things that started was I realized there was something going on in New Brunswick with, bands like Tony Shanahan, who now plays with Patti Smith Group, his band The Boogles, and there was Jigs and the Pigs, and Terry Hughes' band The, not to be confused with the English band. And so all of a sudden I knew that there were these local bands, and I would encourage people to bring their demos up and their records, including the Smithereens, who became huge. And Smithereens had a single, their Girls About Town single, and they played the first ever RSU benefit. They played at the show, and then they went on to become an international band and very famous. But I love that. I thought it was just so important because to me it was not only about playing. It was an exciting time in the early 80s because it was not only about the post-punk, the new wave, the punk rock, and indie rock bands like the Bongos and Feelies from Hoboken, which were great, and we were playing things like that, and Individuals, but there was and all the imports that were coming over. There was so much exciting music, and there seemed like there was a new record every week. And there were 5 that were incredible. There was just so much. There was so much creativity. And the thing that was beautiful about the time, too, was there wasn't really a uniform. I mean, certainly in punk rock, there was that kind of uniform thing. But I felt that it was very DIY, and you could have a band that sounded like, the Bongos. You could have a band that sounded like the Buzzcocks. You could have Gary Newman or like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. Suicide. It was just really interesting that all new music was fair play, and people were really open to a lot of different things. So it was an exciting time. So on 2 different levels, the Melody, the nightclub that I was DJing in, which if it wasn't for Tony Shanahan, I never would have ended up there, because there was a girl named Lourdes who was managing the Crazy Eddie's record store. And she used to give me these absolutely incredible discounts. I would call them a steal because they were close to me stealing. I would bring up a pack of import records, and she would go $2, and they'd be like $7 to $10.99 as imports, which was more expensive than most albums then. That were like, if you were on sale, they were $4.99. Beginning of the '80s, and one day she goes to me, I really like this guy. I'm in love with this guy, Tony Shanahan, and he's got a band, and I think you should come see them play. It's a place in New Brunswick called the Melody, and I didn't know what the Melody was, but I was DJing at a strip club on Route 18 in East Brunswick, New Jersey. I mean, that was my first paid DJ job, and that was an interesting experience, of course, and it was cool. It was educational, and while I was doing college radio as well, and and then, I did every kind of job imaginable. I did security, I did office cleaning, I did convenience stores, like a place called Somerset Farms that used to be in East Brunswick, New Jersey. I did so many jobs like we all did as kids, or teenagers. I worked fast food. I did everything, anything to continue to pay for my records and pay for gas for my car. But that day was pretty incredible, because that day really changed. It was another one of those days that's a defining moment in your life, because by agreeing to go see Tony Shanahan's band, the Boogles, at the Melody, I showed up there. I noticed that they were playing Motown pretty much. That's all they were really playing in there on cassettes. And I went and saw the Boogles and got to know Tony and the guys in the band, and then eventually started going there more often. But when I met the owners, Cal and Steve, who owned the place, Cal Levine and Steve Flax, I said, guys, this music's great, but because they knew I was a DJ on the Rutgers station. So they said, what do you think? And I go, guys, there's a whole new world of music out there right now. There's so much cool stuff going on. And you got all these young people coming in. You should be playing this stuff. They go, well, will you make some cassettes for us? We'll give you $20 for a 90-minute cassette. And so that's what I did. I made a series of cassettes. It was Melody Mix A, B, C, or whatever, or 1, 2, 3. I mean, but it went all the way up. And eventually, people were stealing them from the bar. They're going downstairs in the basement where the tape deck was, which is near one of the walk-ins, like one of the liquor rooms. And they were stealing them right out of the tape player, or when they'd be on the side of the player. And so since I was DJing at this place called Charlie's Uncle, which was a restaurant bar where Richie Zambora from Bon Jovi was the entertainment all the other nights, and it was amazing. It would pack out on a Tuesday night. I mean, there was people. Nightlife was so alive, as you remember, Andy, back in those days. It was really before Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and people were out all the time. It's a very different world than it is right now. Obviously, a lot of things have changed recently because of the pandemic, but in general, anyway, people were, if you really wanted to socialize, there was no internet. You know what I mean? There were no cell phones. There was nothing like that. So you had to go out and make your own fun and meet people. And if you wanted to be around music, live music, seeing bands, listening to DJs playing cool stuff, you had to go out. You had to go out and you had to be social. It forced you to do that. And that was the thing. So the owners came and saw the crowd at Charlie's Uncle of the Melody and said, man, why don't you bring your turntables here? So when I first started DJing at the Melody as their first ever DJ, I had put these 1200s, these turntables and the mixer on the cutting board in the kitchen because they still had a kitchen then. They served lunch there to the locals, some of the it was still like an old man's bar during the day. And at night it turned into this cool college bar that was, but not like, your typical rah-rah college bar. It had like so many different types of characters there. It had everything, you know what I mean? You'd have a doctor next to a transvestite, next to a jock, next to like a total freak or goth, I loved the fact that it was so diverse and cool. It made that place really special. And there were other great things happening in the city too. There was a place called Patrick's and a place called Todd's. Todd's I was also DJing at. It was a short-lived place, but I was there for a while. It was a dance club and a restaurant. There was Patrick's, which was another live venue where bands like the Violent Femmes played in the early days, and Translator, and there were so many. Peter Tork from the Monkees. I remember just so many people there. The Violent Femmes will never forget that show because the guy who booked the Court Tavern for a while or worked there, Sluggo, he ran through the crowd with a water pistol that looked like a gun, and everybody ducked. They thought he was charging the stage with a gun, and so all of Violent Femmes hit the ground. And so Gordon Gano's never forgotten that evening. It was insanity. Plus, they were one of those bands that it was such a bad area of New Brunswick that Patrick's was in. Mm-hmm. That literally somebody tried to run off with their bass drum, and they chased them down the street and with one of the bar backs from the place and got their stuff back. But that's how dangerous that area was at that time. But there was a lot of live music going on. Court Tavern was really the center of it, but there were other venues as well. And it was an exciting time. So getting back to the whole doing RSU, supporting local music, and also the whole new revolution of new music and new wave and alternative, as it's called now, modern rock, indie. It's had many different names, but it was really everything. And it was a great, very exciting time, So everything is, like that. I was there for a long time. I did the Melody for quite a few years. I think I did it 11 years, if I'm not mistaken. I thought it was either 11 or 13, but it was a long time. It's actually got to be, to be honest with you, it's got to probably be 13 years that I did it. I DJ'd at that club consistently for 13 years, which is amazing. And I mean, that's how I, helped raise and support my daughter, which is, but I had a good following. So it was a great opportunity to do that. It was an incredible time, Andy. And you were in the band Spiral Jetty, and you had a great following locally. You also played Hoboken. You played all over. But, there was something that was exciting. And then other people getting involved at RSU. There were so many other great DJs, like, of course, Ethan Stein, who was one of my best friends.
Yes, indeed.
With us. I loved Ethan and Brian Bruden and these guys. There were so many people that were there. But, then RSU became known for, supporting local music. It was on the pulse of what was going on in the city and around the university of local bands and around the state. So it was an incredible place to be, and it was an incredible time to come up through college radio. And college radio still is still important in certain areas of the country. It was essential in those days because, and I'm not saying it's not essential now. I think college radio stations are still great, and I think I love that college radio still exists. It's such a great way to find out about new things and for young people to cut their teeth in doing radio because they love music. So college radio is still super important. But at that point, there were only a couple radio stations in the entire country. There was like LIR in Long Island, K-Rock in LA, 91X in San Diego. And that was really it. And then, when HTG down the Jersey Shore, when I started working there in 84 as a weekender, and then took over managing it in 90, it was one of the only 13 alternative stations in the U.S. Everything changed when Nirvana exploded, and then there were 60, you know what I mean, or 70, or even 80. So, and I was there for that whole experience. So, but it was amazing. And for me, it was, I feel grateful when you were talking about the Beatles and seeing that as a kid. I'm really glad that I lived. I mean, I'm going to be 60 in a month and a half. And I'm really grateful that I've lived through all these eras of music, and I was there for all of that stuff. And when it was new, seeing live shows in the 70s as a kid, and all the great stuff I saw in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s and 2010s. Live music's still a thing that is so important to me, and I love it.
Well, I want to bring our viewing and listening audience back 37 years. You ready to go back with me, Matt?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I had DJ'd at my first college, but like Matt, all I ever wanted to be was a DJ because I wanted to share with the world my passion for music. Now, I was also a bass player in a rock band, but Matt, I really wanted to be a DJ. So my first contact at WRSU when I enrolled at Rutgers was Ethan Stein.
Yeah.
And Ethan looked like Emilio Estevez, and he was a bit, shall we say, confident. And I think he looked me over. And of course, I had to make my demo tape, but he heard the demo tape. And sure enough, I was an RSU. So now it was time, Matt, to listen to all the other DJs. You were Wednesday 2 to 6.
Yeah.
And it was appointment radio. Ladies and gentlemen, this is back in the day where it wasn't just one quick clickety click and you were there. Matt is the poster child for tenacity and for perseverance and for just absorbing all of what we called in the day the rock press, whether it was Rolling Stone or Cream or, of course, NME. And you'd go to the record store and there were 7 inches and 12 inches. And there were all these new bands coming out of the UK that were absolutely making our minds blown. And so when you were on the radio, it was appointment radio because you had that visceral ability to break things before anybody else knew who the HE double hockey sticks they were. And your incredible knowledge and just the way you presented it, it was so captivating that, yes, I would contend your time on RSU was what brought the crowds in on Wednesdays and Sundays at the Melody. Yes, Matt was there on Wednesdays and Sundays. And if it was a Sunday night, you always made sure to set your VCR before you went to the Melody to make sure you got the full 2 hours of 120 minutes. Of course, this is before Matt hosted 120 minutes. But this gentleman, this guest on Hip to the Scene, he is the top expert on two things. One, something we talk about a lot, community. Number two, consistent, sustained promotion. Matt, talk about the community you created at the Melody Bar and in New Brunswick, because if you gave something the Matt Pinfield seal of approval, that was a big dealio.
Yeah, it was, I guess that was one of those things because I was so committed to turning people on to new music. It was something that was, it was part of my DNA from the time I was a young kid. And that meant somebody remembering me bringing in a record to kindergarten, or, in my high school yearbook, I'm holding Tom Petty's first album in like 1976, or a Boomtown Rats album. I'm not sure which one it was, but I was certainly, turning people on to this guy named Tom Petty when no one knew who he was. So for years, that was always my thing. I mean, my passion for music was something I wanted to share. I always thought I was never that elitist guy. I couldn't stand, for me, that was not in my makeup, and I always thought that was lame. When people were, oh, it's my thing, I don't want to share it with you. No, I wanted to turn people on. I wanted everybody to know how great something was. I wanted to share it so people could enjoy that music and that artist as well. So that was a really incredible time. And by creating that community, and then the just amazing people like yourself that became a part of all of it, you being a DJ there too and being in a band, we had just this really incredible group of people. And it was an exciting, creative time and a great time to be a young man. And I'm sure a young woman as well. I mean, it was just incredible that, I look back on it, and, my friend said it to me the other day, Eric Gladstone, who used to, work at the Rutgers paper, the Targum, and he had Inside Beat, which was, he did. And now he's been an editor of many major publications, music publications, has written, been a journalist for years. And now he's like the biggest restaurant critic and writer in Las Vegas. Well, I hadn't seen Eric in a bit, but, we stay in touch, and we had lunch the other day, and he just said, just about how amazing it was that the Melody reunions happen every year. And I know I haven't been at all of them. I couldn't be for certain reasons, but, and then I would make some of them. But the Melody, there was so much devotion to the club and the people that were there, Andy, that every year they would put on a reunion and they'd show pictures, and people would come from all over the country, some from all over the world, and fly all over, because that's how much they loved that period and that time in their lives in New Brunswick. And there was just such an incredible sense of support, excitement, and absolute love for the music, but also just the love for the friendships that were forged through all those periods of time. So it amazes me that the last Melody reunion, I couldn't make it. It was right before the pandemic, and I had just had my retina wall had blown out in my eye. I had to have emergency surgery to sew and reconnect my retina wall, and they had to put a nitrous bubble in my one eye, and I had to lay flat. It was the craziest thing, so that it would hold the wall back, and you couldn't fly, and altitude could explode and destroy your eye. And I could have gone blind if I hadn't caught it when I did. It was pretty much a miracle. Another one of those things where, like getting hit by the car and almost killed when the woman ran a red light and hit me. I've been very, very blessed to get through some incredible times. But there were, like, according to Eric, as we were talking the other day, he said, I finally made it back to a Melody, and there was over 400 people there. And those are people that came from everywhere. And then, all these old great DJs who, some that I had trained, some that had come and trained on their own, people that were part of that club. All the DJs come out and do hour sets, and it's just it's a great celebration. Not only of a time, but of, like you said, of a community, of people that were like-minded, that were open-minded, that had a love for new, exciting music, and wanted to share it, wanted to dance, wanted to socialize in that center. And I think that's a really amazing thing. I think about those things, and I'm very, very grateful that started with cassette tapes in that club. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to just hear Motown when I knew there were hundreds of new great artists out there that were coming through. And I look at it, how all those things had started, and I'm grateful to have those experiences in my past and in my life. I don't take anything for granted. You know what I mean? It's amazing when you get to be my age, our age, close to our age. As I'm turning 60 in the next couple of months, I look back and I consider myself a very, very blessed man, that I've, that my dream as I was a kid, had come true, that I worked really hard. And, it's one of those things where it's really, you have to, believe me, there were times in the 80s where I thought I was never going to get a break in radio. Because it wasn't like where other people were in the United States. If you were in a major city like New York, and there weren't really many stations in Jersey, that, weren't playing beautiful music or, just super local, where people had worked there for their whole lives. It was a very hard thing to break into. And so until RXP came on, not RXP, HTG, that was when I got my opportunity. And I would drive through snowstorms. I would drive, and work holidays. It didn't matter. I was on weekends. In fact, when I became music director, I was working 7 days a week, still doing the clubs. But I was working 7 days a week there because I didn't want to give up my weekend show, but I had to work every day to do, to work as a music director. That's kind of the love and devotion I had to radio, and to radio that was supported and played new music. So, but I look at all those experiences and I'm extremely grateful. Andy, you think about it, like you said, I've done thousands of interviews, and I've interviewed almost every hero that I've ever had, and then, had relationships and friendships with some of these people that I idolized as a child, as a teenager, even as an adult. And if you told the young Matt Pinfield at Rutgers, when he was like 19 or 20, you're going to be you'll be friends with Ringo Starr, and you'll interview McCartney and all the Stones, and and Bowie will ask you for advice on his record, and you'll go to Bowie's house. I would have said, "You're dreaming." I couldn't fathom that thought. Let's face it. When I started in college radio, MTV didn't even exist yet. It was just starting. It was just about to start up. So TV wasn't even a thought. Radio was all I could think about. I wanted to be in radio. I wanted to be a DJ. I loved that. But then the MTV thing, changed my life completely, changed the trajectory. And, they had to tell you, people ask you about when you become, when all of a sudden you realize that you're actually a well-known personality, or you're, people like to use the word famous, whatever you want to call it, but, to whatever degree. But the funny thing is, Andy, the time I was on the street in Times Square leaving MTV one night, people come up and go, "Matt, how you doing?" I'm like, "I'm good. How you guys doing?" So, "How are things down in Brunswick in the Melody?" They're like, "We're from Ohio." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." Oh, and so I really hadn't figured out or fathomed that people were watching me all over the country yet. In fact, at that point, MTV was international. Other than the UK one, everything broadcast in America was broadcast in all the other territories. So I was being seen internationally everywhere in the world, where years later I found that out. People had told me from India and you know, and you know, Dominican Republic, and you know, I mean, wherever it is. I mean, all over Brazil, all over the world, people were seeing my shows, and I wasn't aware of that. But it was a beautiful thing, and what an incredible thing. You know, I think the thing that really I'm the most excited about all the time is that I'm still doing 2 radio shows now, and you know, and I'm working on TV shows. I just, you know, even though I shot it 2 years ago, this show on Amazon Prime, Paradise City, I play myself in 3 episodes, interviewing characters in there, and the show was #1 on Amazon, #1 on iTunes, #1 on Fandango trending, and IMDb, and you know, and it's exciting. I look totally different. I've lost a ton of weight. I'm healthier than I've ever been. I've been sober as we speak, just over 11 months, going on a year. And I'm really grateful for that because I've turned my health around in every way and therefore turned my life around, you know, because being sober has afforded me the ability to continue to work doing what I love and trying, you know, I mean, the goal is, right? Not just being sober, but the goal is, you know, to live a good, honest life and be the best version of yourself that you can be. You know what I mean? And that's the goal every day. What is the goal? The goal is to be the best version of myself I can be. An honest person who's a man of my word. And that's the most important thing to me. And then I'm there for the people I love, my children, my 2 daughters, you know, who are adults now, but and my mom, you know, and my family and my friends, because I have the gift of some really incredible friends in my life, and people, you know, obviously prove that over more time and time again. So, you know, I've got a lot of gratitude. I've got you know, there's a lot of self-realization that I know that I've had a blessed life, and I don't take any of that for granted. And now I'm taking very good care of myself physically, spiritually, mentally, in all those ways that I need to, because I want to be around for a long time, you know, and I want to keep doing what I love. So, you know, I mean, we're only here so long on this planet.
Absolutely. Right? It is a short dance in the sun.
Yeah.
And it's true, folks. Everybody watching this episode of Hip to the Scene, you were just given so much sage wisdom. And Matt is absolutely 100% correct when he says, you got to be yourself and you got to look out for others. He has given ungrudgingly to so many of the most talented and famous creatives, as well as when I was coming up. I think as a human magnet, Matt, the biggest thing you taught me, because you know in the music industry, there's this unwritten rule where you kind of have to be chill and cool and not too excited about things. And what I learned from you, and of course I've taken it with me for my 37-year journey since I met you, if you're enthusiastic and if you're energetic and if you're ebullient because you enjoy what you do, I mean, that was the thing about you, Matt. People were drawn to you because of that energy. You know, music is a mood-altering drug,
Yes.
Or shall I say even better, a vibration. And that vibration through Matt, you amplified it, sir, absolutely every time you made it happen.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I mean, I appreciate you saying that. And, you know, I'm very grateful I've had those platforms to do that, you know, and in the same way, you know, Andy, that I love that you said that because you have that energy, and I love that energy. I think that the whole trying to be too cool, I mean, if it is your demeanor, like, then you obviously, that's who you are. You and I don't sit in a judgment of that, but I also believe that showing your true self and your true passion and having that energy is a good thing and should, you know, and you'll find people that that are drawn to that in a big way, and then other people that may not understand it or be jealous of it, or you know, not understand it, I mean, but at the end of the day, you know what? Be true to thyself, and that's the most important thing. You know what I mean? Know thyself,
Absolutely.
be true to thyself. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's, I mean, and with me being in recovery, I mean, that was something that a true realization that it had to come down for me. It's like, no, I cannot pick up a drink. For many years I drank, and in the early years it was manageable, and then when it becomes to the point where it's not, you've got to make a decision. Is this how I want to go out? This is, it's very sad to me that DMX just passed away, because I interviewed DMX quite a few times. I, and I, was on the road doing a thing with Farm Club with his Rough Riders, Cash Money Millionaires. And he was a very nice man, and I thought he was incredibly talented. But I'm sure that it was cocaine or something like cocaine that caused that heart attack that he had, because I knew that's what he was struggling with in earlier years. And it's heartbreaking, And he's left a lot of children behind. And, I consider myself blessed that I'm still here. And I can't go in that direction again,
No, sir.
One day at a time. But you know what? My friends that are successful in sobriety say, I made the decision, I'm not going to drink again, one day at a time. But they've made the actual commitment, and that's where I'm at. Because I love life too much. I mean, I'm too grateful to wake up every day. It's beautiful. I mean, I would be happy, I love New Jersey too. I love New York. I mean, when I lived in San Francisco. I love Florida, where my family is. But I live in Southern California, and it's sunny most of the time. And I wake up, and even if it's not a perfect day, it's still a perfect day for me, because I walk outside and it's sunshine, which is all it takes to make me happy, really. Plus, I'm grateful because I still got music in my life. Music surrounds me, and it's music and good people, and that's all I've ever wanted, really. I've never needed, crazy riches. It wasn't about material things other than the things that I needed. We all want nice things, but you know what I mean? I'm talking about the things that I need, just to, for me, as long as music's a big part of my life and I'm getting to work in entertainment as I still do that I love so much, and my kids are healthy, I'm a happy guy, man. I mean, I'm good,
Well, coming from a teaching family, I will share with you that I have learned experience is a hard teacher. She gives the test first, and the lessons afterwards.
Yeah, that's a great one. I like that.
And Matt, I can share with you that most of the members of the human family, if they had to endure some of the things that you've encountered on your life journey, I would say the majority of them would have folded up like a cheap lawn chair. But you truly have just this innate way, the kids, it's all about engagement and interaction. You are the top shelf world expert of engagement and interaction and making eye contact with people. And as we used to say, making them feel the love. Can you share with this viewing and listening audience? These are all creatives just looking for great advice to forward their career. Can you please speak to how important, how profoundly important it is, engagement, interaction in a way that is genuine and real?
I think the thing, what I've learned from my experience and my life's journey is by being absolutely genuine when you engage and being yourself, and it's the most important thing. And yes, you really do have to pay attention to what other people are saying. People ask me about about my interviewing technique and what it is, and I said, well, I know one thing. I like to have a conversation because I want the person that I'm interviewing. It's just a very natural thing for me to do, to want to really have a conversation with them like they're a friend. You know what I mean? And because that's really what the best things come out of those kind of conversations. And I want to pay attention to what people say, and that's one of the things you're talking about with engagement, is actually paying attention to what people say, and not just like waiting to ask the next question. It's like, cool, like you're talking to me right now. We're having a conversation. It's great, and I love that. That to me is so important, because I think that's how you get the best out of people. I think engagement is so important. I think that's one of the things with obviously, things have changed with young people. I mean, they're attached to their phones, and many adults are as well. And I use my phone all the time as well, and in our computers and on our phones. And that's just, that's where the world has gone. But it's one of the things that's most important is to engage. I mean, you get so much out of the interaction with other people, and getting back to the thing about sobriety is, they always say that you can't do it alone. It's really all about the people that you surround yourself with, and that network of friends, of people. It's back to that thing that you talked about from the very beginning of this interview, community. It's absolutely the most important thing. But it is important to engage, and it's important to be absolutely genuine and authentic, because at some point, people will see through it if it's not. People will know, and whether they love you or don't like you or whatever it happens to be, or don't care, the most important thing is that you can look at yourself in the mirror and say that I'm authentic, I'm genuine, and that's the most important thing. And I think that's what really wins. Also, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I've been doing this for so long. Its longevity is being authentic and being genuine, and people being able to tell. But people can tell. People are not stupid. People can tell when it's bullshit. They really can.
True.
You can get over for a little while, but eventually the truth will rear its head. You know what I mean? People will understand whether you're an imposter or you're not being honest. These things, they will find their way out. They will manifest. So it's most important to be genuine, and being in engagement the way that you do, the way that you and I like to, to interact with people, I think it's an incredible gift, and it's something that we love to do, nurture, and continue to do. And I think it's important, And like I said, everybody, especially with what you and I do, because you are a people person, and so am I. I mean, I love people, and I thrive on interaction with people, because I think people are, I don't believe anything great can be done alone, except for maybe some people that do some introspective songwriting, right? Or maybe creating or writing, and sometimes that can be done alone. But I think ultimately, though, there is still, from that, you have to have outside stimulation. You really do. I think that's what makes us human. Those are the things that really help us, get through. And so that's really how I feel about that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you were just given an incredible, insightful, just life-affirming moment right there from the one and only Matt Pinfield. And it is true. The truth has a certain ring to it. So if you're creative, or you're in a band, or you're a singer-songwriter, and you're not speaking your truth, it's going to suck to be you. Tell them, Matt.
Yeah. You really have to be you got to be yourself. I mean, it's the most important thing in the world, because, at the end of the day, you got to look at yourself in the mirror, and, and you don't want to have to carry around not being who you really are, and not being genuine. And you know what? Everybody's allowed to make mistakes in life. These things happen. We're human beings. We do make mistakes. Life is trial and error. But don't be afraid to make those mistakes, and don't let the fear of making mistakes ever hold you back. The important thing is to remember that you're absolutely worth it. You got to believe that inside it, and you know what? And you got to don't let you will sometimes be hurt or offended by others who don't necessarily get what you want to do with your life, or just don't understand it. And a lot of times that has to do with them and less to do with you. So the thing is to remember you're worth it. And never give up. That's the biggest thing. If you could take away anything from me, it's just never give up. It's one thing you can honestly say about me, that I never give up.
No, sir. And
knocked on my ass many a times. I've been knocked on my ass, but it's a famous line about a song. There was a song by a band called The Hours a few years back called "Ollie in the Jungle," and it was not a big hit. It was a hit in England, but it wasn't a hit in the States. But it was there was a lyric in it. Everybody gets knocked down. How quick are you going to get up? And that's really what it comes down to. And it was talking about Muhammad Ali in the chorus and Nelson Mandela and some other people in the lyrics of the song. But it was really about that. It was about what you mentioned earlier in the interview, and that was perseverance. And literally, that's it. I mean, and just, you don't give up. You know what I mean? That's it.
Indeed. And what Matt is saying right here is very simple. It's better to try something and fail than it is to do nothing and succeed. You got to let failure be your teacher, Matt, not your undertaker, right?
Yes, because failure is something we all need to experience at times. It builds character. It actually really helps build up. It really helps build character and just gives you a real foundation as a human, to know as a human being, as to know really what your next moves are to make. But I mean, it's nothing worse than not trying. And listen, we've all failed at something, everybody, and we've all had our heart broken, and there's things we've done that we regret. There's certainly that whether people say they have no regrets, I'm not, some people probably don't, maybe, depending on, the kind of person they are. But I will say that at the same time, we've got to learn to love ourselves, live with ourselves, love the people around us that really matter to us. And just, it's so important to literally try things. And like I said, the saddest thing is knowing that you have a dream or you want to try something and not at least giving it a shot, like not just doing something, trying to move towards that, and sometimes it's very hard. And, listen, I mean, like I said, I had the door closed on my face many times. Like I said earlier in the interview, there were times when I thought I would never get a break in the music industry or radio. I thought, like, maybe I know too much. Maybe I'm too straightforward. Maybe too much. Had all that kind of stuff. I had all those questions and self-doubts like other people do, But I just kept at it and eventually found my people, you know what I mean? So, like I said, better to fail. We've all failed at something. We've all tried something that I think, didn't go as far as we wanted to or didn't get there at all. But being able to live with yourself is being able to say that you at least took that chance. You know what I mean? And I think the saddest thing is when people never take that chance and they have incredible talent and they just don't do anything with it. They don't even try,
Matt, let me just tell you that you have always been impossible not to root for. But talk about getting knocked to the ground and kind of wiping yourself off and getting up again and forging ahead. It's just made you even more impossible not to root for. I mean, New and Improved is just the most incredible format where you just get to do the bro down with people you've known. And of course, legendary, iconic figures. And of course, the anticipation for no cover is off the hook because most of the people receiving this transmission, they're rock and rollers. And they're tuning in because they know you are the most trusted opinion in rock music in a world torn asunder. And I can't even imagine the excitement. And I know you probably can't say who the bands are yet. These bands that appeared on the program, it must have been adrenaline to the 10th degree for these kids.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's some amazing talent there. I mean, there were kids that were like in bands that were incredible in their teens to, people that were in their 20s and 30s and even a little older that were incredible. And, yes, we're not allowed to talk about any of that stuff yet because it is a competition show, but it's really, there's some amazing talent there, and I think people are going to be really excited to see this show as a breath of fresh air, as the opposite, what you kind of always wanted, because it's not just about the singer; it's about the bass player, the drummer, the keyboard player. You know what I mean? The bass player, the guitar virtuoso. The guy who plays the synths. It's about everybody in a band. If it is about a singer or a person who's a front person, it's still about the band around them as well. So it's not just about the head. And I think that's something that'll be really refreshing to people. Plus, they have to write their own music, and that makes it. I'm not taking away from people that are great singers and that have actually gotten an opportunity, like my friend Chris Daughtry, right, who was in American Idol, and he came in like number 3 or 4 on that show. And he has a music career, and he's a very, very close friend of mine, and that was the way he got exposed. So I do not begrudge people getting exposed in shows like American Idol, The Voice, or X Factor, if that's the way they have to find a platform to get exposed, if it works for them. But I love the no cover format. I think it's the greatest thing for new music, because it's a challenge for people to not only be able to really perform and convince you that they're legitimate and they're the real deal, but they have to come up with the art itself, the music. And I think that's really cool.
Well, I am quite certain that when No Cover hits the airwaves, it's going to be a huge hit, Matt. It's going to have a long run, and it's just going to lead to more opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, please know our guest today on Hip to the Scene, he's lived it, breathed it, sweat it, bled it. And you really want to check out the new show, No Cover. And Matt, is it okay if I plug your awesome book?
Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be really nice of you to do.
It's called All These Things I've Done, My Insane, Improbable Rock Life. And it really is a page turner, Matt. And of course, we'll all be expecting a sequel in the not too distant future with all of the incredible and maybe not so incredible things that have happened on your life journey.
Yeah,
but
I think
writing a book, Matt, oh my gosh, you are an impresario.
Well, I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity for the book to come out, and it was re-released during the pandemic. It came out in paperback. The hardcover came out in September of 2016, and during the pandemic, it was actually around this time last year. They released a paperback, which was really exciting. People like Judd Apatow, who's obviously directed and written some great movies, and he's an incredible talent here in Hollywood. A guy from Long Island, and was talking about how much he loved the book and the stories in there, and I think that kind of really generated new interest in the publishers and elsewhere. So I'm very grateful that that book came out and tells a lot of the story and brings attention to a lot of things and places that you and I were both at, and I think it's a great thing. It was a great opportunity, but there's a lot more to tell. I mean, certainly after being hit by a car and getting through all of that, and my bouts with sobriety and everything else, I think there's going to be more of that in the next book, because I was once told by somebody, you have an incredible platform, and you need to continue to use it for good. And, that is what I do. I've been going and speaking to a lot of young people and even adults about sobriety, about recovery. Do that on a regular basis because I want to be of service, because I really believe that you always have to give back. I think it's the most important thing. I do a lot of charity work, whether it's for Save the Music or Road Recovery or all these different mental health organizations. I do a lot of stuff, and I love doing it because, it's really important that since I've been given the gift of having my life turned around and doing the work to get there, I want to help other people get to that next place. I want to, and I want to show people, the literally the faith, strength, and hope that goes along with turning your life around. And even after some of the craziest shit in the world, things that I've been through and done. When I say done, I mean, it's not like, here's the good news is I never really hurt anybody on purpose. I never, like, my whole thing was the reason why I'm still, like, out here and still doing well and still working is because it was never, ever, like, vindictive or nasty or wronged people with my issues with alcoholism and addiction. The person I was hurting was myself and the people that loved me around me because of the way I made them worry, and them having to worry about me because it's never just about one person. It's about everybody that you touch outside it. The same goes for when you do good things. You know what I mean? But
absolutely. And I'd be remiss, Matt, if I didn't just say to everyone watching, one of the probably the most important and difficult job a man can enter into, it's fatherhood. And everyone's got to know, Matt, your talented daughter, Jessica, tell the listening and viewing audience what just happened to Jessica with the big win.
Oh, yeah. Well, my daughter wrote, and she actually stars in a short film, and she's been writing scripts. She's got a new thing going on with Sundance as well, with the Sundance program. But she had entered her film called Red Giant into quite a few festivals, and she won 3 awards in one festival alone for Best Actress, Best Acting Duo, and also Best Female Film Short. And she won one other one, and she's up for quite a few others. She's working on new scripts now, and she's both my daughters. I'm very blessed. I have 2 daughters that I love very much. There's Jessica. There's Maya. Maya is she does virtual. She's been doing training. She's very into fitness and paleo, and she's an influencer. And she does. She's another very, very bright young woman. The best thing about my kids are, they have compassion, they have empathy. They've got enough confidence in themselves, but they have good hearts, and they're hardworking. So that's one of the things that I love about both my daughters. They work hard, and they're not afraid to work hard. And I think they take that work ethic from me. I'm definitely part of where that comes from. So my kids.
And you must be enormously proud, Matt.
Oh, they're amazing. My daughters are great. I mean, it's really what it's all about for me. I mean, I love what I'm doing. I'm still working really hard and doing all these things that I really enjoy doing. But what I do, right now, it's all about my daughters. Especially because I'm single now, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's cool. But but I love my daughters, and they're great. And I live with my one, and the other one I talk to every day. And again, I told you earlier, I call my mother every day, as I promised my dad the day that he passed away. Just because I want my mother to know how much I love her every day, because I don't know how much longer she's going to be with me, but hopefully for quite a long time. But, we all know that our day is coming someday. And we're all, so I think the other thing I want to tell people is, just let the people in your life that you love know you love them. Don't be afraid to tell people how much you care about them, because you just never know when that last opportunity to tell them how much they mean to you will come along. I think a lot of people experience those kind of things through this pandemic and COVID. I lost quite a few friends who died during this. I know a lot of people who lost family members, and it's really important to let people that you know in your life how much they mean. Let them know how much they mean to you. That's something I want people to take away from this as well.
Absolutely. Matt has spent 6 decades giving of himself ungrudgingly, not asking for a whole lot in return. And as we've seen, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of Hip to the Scene, it will come back to you tenfold, right, Matt?
Absolutely. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm very blessed and grateful.
And folks, if you're like Matt and I, and there might be more sand in the bottom of the hourglass than there is in the top, what Matt just said, 100% take it to heart, and make it happen. And for those people out there who have more sand in the top of the hourglass than in the bottom, you have to do the exact same thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciated this opportunity to do the show with you. It's great to see you. We've been friends for almost 4 decades now. So
yes, sir.
It's great to see you. You know, I miss all my friends like yourself on the East Coast. But I'm really glad that we have the opportunity. That's why FaceTime and Zoom and all these other ways to, keeps us in touch. I'm grateful for that technology.
It is amazing. Now, Matt, I will tell you, to keep our viewers tuned in, we, at the end of every single episode of Hip to the Scene, we give you the answer to the trivia question we didn't ask.
Okay. And what is it?
Okay, I have a couple for you. I think the first couple, well, let's see if we can stump Matt Pinfield. Are you ready, Matt?
Yeah, let's go for it, Andy.
Okay, here we go. Chad Channing.
Who was the original drummer of Nirvana?
Ding, 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 ding. Did anyone expect Matt Pinfield to not get that one? Thank you, Matt. Now, little harder. Here we go. Apollo C. Vermouth.
You know what's weird? I am totally spacing on that one. I don't know. You're going to have to tell me. I got that one wrong. Who is it?
That's okay. The answer to the trivia question that we didn't ask is Apollo C. Vermouth. And the question will be in the YouTube description.
Yeah.
So, one more, Matt, and we'll see if you get it. This is a fun one. It was Richie's grandma's favorite song.
Richie's grandma's favorite song.
Richie spelled Ritchie.
Yeah. Wow. That I don't remember. You're going to have to tell me that one.
Sure, I'm going to give you that one. How did Deep Purple get their name? Yeah, okay, cool. The Deep Purple, the song. Yes.
Yeah, a great tune. What a great, what a great band, by the way. Many different like versions of the band, right? Even the first one with like Hush, the second one with all, with Ian Gillan. They went through all the different singers over the years. Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale. They're a great band. I'm glad you remembered that. That's weird. I had not thought about that in a long time. So thank you for putting that back in my memory.
Oh my gosh, you're sincerely welcome. So a couple final plugs, everybody. Number 1, KLOS, Los Angeles, the City of Angels. Matt Pinfield, new and improved. It is Sunday nights, 8 to 10. And yes, we spoke about Alice Cooper. But when you see all of your favorite artists sitting down with our guest, I'm telling you, folks, you ain't going to be clicking nowhere else, because Matt has always asked the absolute best questions, and he just doesn't gloss over things. He goes deep. Obviously, his encyclopedia knowledge is obviously why he's got the gig to talk to all of your favorite legendary rock stars. Matt, I did want to ask, between Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, and getting that call from David Bowie, hey, come on, I want you to hear these new songs on Heathen. What was the one that got the adrenaline pumping the most?
God, they were all pretty amazing. I think getting that call from Bowie was pretty intense. There's no question about it. But also, working with McCartney. I mean, it is Paul McCartney. It is the Beatles. So, God, they're all pretty amazing. But getting the phone call at the Hit Factory from Bowie on my cell, going, Matt, David Bowie. That was pretty amazing. So, there's I've got so many incredible moments that I've been very blessed to have, and they're really
yes, indeedy. And of course, the book. I am very confident, Matt, that numerous viewers and listeners to this episode of Hip to the Scene is going to be going out to get all these things I've done, my insane, improbable rock life. It is the one and only Matt Pinfield, ladies and gentlemen. Matt, many, many sincere and profound thanks for being our guest on Hip to the Scene.
Thank you, Andy. We'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, Matt. Stay strong and keep fighting the good fight.
All right, Andy. It was fun. I had a good time with you, Andy. It was good.